Well, welcome. This is me, Franken, also known as Daniel. For a lot of you, this is the first time seeing who I am. This is my kind of bland environment. If you've got suggestions about what I should be having on the shelf over there or hang on the wall, please let me know. But that's not the point of this video. Today, we're going to look into UTXOs and coin control. And I've labeled this getting hands-on with your ordinals because we can go a little bit deeper rather than just sending things and kind of go a little bit deeper in the sense of understanding how transactions go about. Today, we're going to go over a few different topics. Number one, what is a UTXO? Number two, UTXOs and Ordinals, how they actually relate with each other. Number three, what is an Ordinal-aware wallet? And lastly, number four, coin control, what that actually means. So what is a UTXO? UTXO, also an unspent transaction output, is the model used for managing spendable Bitcoin. On Ethereum, you will have account balances that are kind of kept track of, whereas on Bitcoin, you have unspent transaction outputs that kind of combine in your wallet. We're going to have a look at the wallet on the right-hand side here before we start reading these dot points. But basically, Party A's wallet. And to us, like a lot of us use wallets like Xverse, Lether, and we just see the balance at the top. So we might see 0.8 Bitcoin. But behind the scenes, and we go deeper, so just stay with me, we go deeper. Behind the scenes, there's actually multiple different UTXOs. And they're unspent amounts of Bitcoin that you have permission to spend. And so that's how that keeps track of things on the network. But just to go back over that again, we imagine that someone sent you 1 million sats, someone sent you 5 million sats, and they're all different little UTXOs there. And they're basically, you can also have change from transactions. Now we'll look at that a little later on as well. So we've got quite a bit to get through, but let's do it. The other thing to know with UTXOs or unspent transaction outputs, that they are groups of Satoshis that have not been spent. So inside this group of 1 million sats, there might be one sat from 2009. There might be 5,000 from 2013. And there might be a few from random dates as well. That doesn't matter. But the thing to realize is that these have come from a period and they've kind of all joined together to be in one UTXO. So you can combine UTXOs. So they are groups of Satoshis that have not been spent yet. They are sent to your public key and protected by your private key. When you go to make a transaction, so say Party A goes to spend 1 million sats, they'll basically sign that transaction to say, yep, I own the private key to this public key. And then the transaction would be broadcast from there. And the nodes verify that, sorry. It doesn't have a concept of accounts or balances. So these UTXOs are not aware of each other. It's not like it kind of, they tally each other together. It's the wallet infrastructure itself tallies them together for you. They can be combined with others at the same time. So when you go to send, say if you had 0.81 in your Lether or Xverse wallet, and you go to send 0.4 Bitcoin, it's actually going to join all these together, combine them, and send them out. And behind the scenes, you don't know, but what it's doing is getting multiple UTXOs and combining them and sending them out as one there. Transaction history is stored permanently on chain, yes, so you can actually track UTXOs that kind of go back. But let's look at a transaction and then we'll go a bit more into UTXOs and how they are linked together. So let's imagine Party A wants to send 0.125 Bitcoin, 0.0125 Bitcoin to Party B. So what happens in this process? First of all, what we want to do is make sure we have a transaction. And it's 1.25 million sats. So we don't have enough here. So we have to actually combine these UTXOs. So there'll be two different inputs. And a lot of this happens behind the scenes. So you have no idea it's happening with the wallets that kind of self-manage or manage UTXOs that don't have coin control. And so you've got two different UTXOs. They go in and they have to be spent in their entirety. So you have to send all 5,000 sats into that transaction. And what happens is you get one output that goes to Party B and you get one output that's returning to you. So that's the unspent transaction output. And so hopefully it starts to all make a bit more sense now that anytime there is a UTXO spent, you receive change from that transaction. So all of a sudden these two are gone, the transaction's been verified, and Party B has their 1.2 million sats, and then you have your change from that transaction, the change from this here. So total inputs was 6 million sats and total outputs is 6 million sats. And I haven't shown the transaction fee as a part of an output as well, but that does go to the miner. So there is a transaction fee that's not accounted for, but it is taken out of this amount here. So Yeah, hopefully that makes sense, that it can be combined and you get returned the change. And that's now your wallet has 4 different UTXOs totaling 0.7975, and they've gone up to 0.2625. So let's dig in. So as I mentioned, UTXOs all come from somewhere. So there is a transaction chain. And basically, let's imagine this is the block reward. So back in 2009, the block reward was 50 Bitcoin. So this person, the Coinbase transaction, they were sent 50 Bitcoin. And from there, they've decided they're going to spend 40 of their Bitcoin. So they've sent 40 to this wallet here, and they've received 10 change. So now they have a UTXO that's worth 10 Bitcoin. This party here started with 40 because we sent 40 to them. And what they've done is they've actually decided, hey, I'm going to send 10 here and 10 here. So they've spent 20 and they've received 20 change. So they started with 40, spent 20, they received 20. So that's a new UTXO there. And then these two people here, so they started with 10 each. This person spent 4, so they sent 4 to this party here. And this person spent 5, and they started with 10, so they spent 2.5 here, 2.5 here. And you can see how UTXOs will start to build up. And these are all wallets here, and it doesn't matter what time frame this is, that this could happen ages in between blocks. These are not representing blocks, they're just wallets that have had Bitcoin sent to them. So yeah, this person sent 2.5 here, sent 2.5 here, and this person started with 6.5, and they sent 3.5 to this wallet here, and they haven't spent anything. So what you can see as well is when they spent 3.5, because they sent 4, they had 0.5 in change that was returned back to them. So once again, you think about our wallets, and ordinals are a part of a UTXO. So when we have our ordinals, they're actually based inside a UTXO. So my wallet, I've got 20, 30 of these UTXOs because they represent each ordinal that I have as well. So the thing that I'll also point out is we started with 50. That's 50 came from this block reward. If you add all of these up together, they equal 50. So the network can keep track and verify that these previous transactions happened, and they're actually valid transactions as well. Now, to visualize transactions, so a lot of us look at Mempool and it gets a bit confusing. I don't blame you. It is something that takes a little bit of time, and there's reasons why there's complexities there, and some of it's privacy based, so it's actually a great thing. But ordinals to us, as I said, they're just UTXOs floating, or sats floating around as well. So with this one here, this person wanted to send 15,000 sats to party B. And so in their wallet, they had 11,000 sats in one UTXO, so it didn't equal 15. So they had to combine 2. So they've got 21,000 sats that are being sent. And so this is from the same address. So you can see they're the same address, but they're 2 different UTXOs that were combined to send 15 to this party here. And the change returned was 5,366. The thing that I'll point out here is if you were to use a wallet like Xverse or Hero, the change that you get would actually be sent back to this address typically, I believe so. But I'm using a wallet with Coin Control, and it actually provides me another change address. So this is great for privacy because people don't actually know who I sent this to. It was me that it came back to, but people don't actually know that because it's a privacy feature that's there. UTXOs and Ordinals. As we mentioned, Ordinals are inscriptions when they're created. So you imagine your inscription is at the top here of a UTXO. So we've got a UTXO of 10,000 sats. This is my wallet here, and these are all different UTXOs. So we've got a UTXO of 10,000 sats, and at the top is my very first inscription. So previously we talked about you can have different ranges inside UTXOs. So it might be a sat from 2009, might be a sat from 2013, whatever. It's just an accumulation adding up to 10,000 in total. So this first sat it should be the one that has the inscription on it. You should never find an inscription that's at a different offset other than 0, which is the very first sat of the UTXO. So from there, you have another 5,000 sat range. And as I mentioned before, it might have been accumulation of other UTXOs that have created this ordinal, or it might have been padded back up, this UTXO, I should say. And so you've got 5,000 there and then 4,999 sat range. So you can have multiple different sats. And to show you an example of my OMB, what we have here is we can see this is the UTXO, so the output. So in my wallet, I have a UTXO that has output of this number here. And it has 2 different sat ranges. So inside the UTXO, not inside the wallet itself, but inside the UTXO, like we're looking at here, sorry, I should say, we have one sat and then 7,706 sats as well. And the reason why we need that is because you have to, when they're created, they're actually created with 10,000 sats using ORD. So usually your UTXO, when you create them, will have your inscription on number one and then 9,999 padding those as well. So you can actually modify that. People have changed. It has to be over the dust limit, which is the minimum amount you can spend in a transaction. So that's one thing to bear in mind. But yeah, you do need to have padding inside your UTXO with your ordinal there. So as you can see, this is from 2009. So they've put the inscription on that first sat. And then you've got the rest of the sats in that range there. And you could have an ordinal that's inside a UTXO that only has one sat range as well. So it might be that they've put it on the first one of the 7,777 sats that are in your wallet. That's completely fine. But this one here was from 2009. So they've kind of isolated it and then buffed up the rest, put the padding there as well. So you could look at your wallet as if all these UTXOs are just different sats from different periods. So as we mentioned, the time frame before where you look at the UTXOs, there's some from 2009, some from, if there were other blocks mined, they might have been from 2013 and so on. So you can, if you entertain ordinal theory, then you can basically say that these have sats from different periods. That's totally up to you whether you go down that path or not. But inscribed ordinals typically live on the first sat of a UTXO, as we talked about here. They should live at the very start of this sat range. And you'll see if you scroll down, you can't see it here, but if you scroll down, you'd see offset 0. So that means that the inscription is at 0. And a bit daunting, but they can be accidentally spent if not handled correctly. But we'll look at that. So yes, as I was showing, number 1 and the rest of the range there. So this number here, if you took this number from this number, it would equal 7,776. So that range is just literally, because they're based off what Casey's created with the ordinal theory, those sats in this range have been numbered or serialized. So you can give them serialization and determine what range they're from. All right, and I'm jumping all over the place here. You do have the introduction of ordinal-aware wallets. Now, when ordinals kind of blew up, we were kind of just using wallets that had coin control because we didn't have a way to manage our ordinals too well. And there's two different parts to ordinal-aware wallets. One, there's an indexer behind the scenes. So we don't kind of see that happens, but if you know what a UTXO has in it, and that's because it's been indexed, so there's a list of what inscriptions are living where. When you get sent something, a wallet can basically organize that and go, yep, that's that image here, and this is going to be, this is in this UTXO in this section of your wallet. And so with ordinal-aware wallets, what they've done is they've made it a little bit more simple again. They've kind of, Unisat does it where it's all one address, so they index and then separate them themselves. But where Xverse and Leather, what they do is they actually have a separate receiving address. The great thing about this is it's very hard to accidentally spend your ordinals because they are nice and safe. So if you were to click this button here, you'd be able to see all your inscriptions. And with this one here in Leather, you can see them all on that under the collectibles tab. But so what they've done is they've got two different addresses. You receive Bitcoin to a SegWit address, and I believe it's a SegWit address for Leather as well. And then when you would click the receive button, then it will provide you a Taproot address, which is a totally different address, but it's all under the same wallet as well. So they separate things so you can't actually accidentally spend your ordinal or send your ordinal. And we'll look at an example of that in a minute. So it reduces the risk of sending in an ordinal instead of Bitcoin, because when you go to send, you click on the actual inscription itself and then hit send. And as we were talking about before, these are all just UTXOs that are hanging out in your wallet. So you're basically sending a UTXO. And when you do that, there's actually fees that are involved, and they take the fees from this section of your wallet here. So they combine UTXOs. So like we saw two inputs before, they basically do that, and they send your inscription at the top, and then they as the first input, and then the fees or the Bitcoin for the fees as a second input, because the fees are taken off the bottom there. Cool, I think that's it for that slide. And coin control. So what are some of the benefits of coin control? And coin control refers to the ability to individually manage your UTXOs when selecting your inputs and outputs. And Sparrow is probably the most popular Bitcoin wallet that I've used. And anything I reference here is actually talking about Sparrow wallet as well. So it might be different for some other wallets, but you can see these are all UTXOs here. And I suppose it doesn't look as pretty as what like your Xverse or your Leather wallet would as well. And you can see on the right-hand side, there's the amounts of sats. And these are actually a few inscriptions in my wallet as well, but you can't tell from a brief look. So that's one of the risks that you run into there. So you have greater control over your funds. So I can pick and choose what UTXOs I want to spend. I can pick and choose what different addresses that I send it from as well. I can isolate sats. So I can choose from this 10,000 sats here to send the first 4,532, and then I want the next one that's after that because it has a unique name, and I can select that and basically remove it and send it. And we'll look at that in a second as well, in a minute. Increase privacy with the ability to connect to your own node and receive change to a change address. So talked about previously with the outputs that we saw in the transaction that it went back to a change address. So that is something that can happen, which if you looked at all your addresses here, you would actually see there's a bunch of change addresses as well. And yeah, you can connect your own node. So instead of, if you're connected to someone else's node, they can actually see what transactions are coming from your Sparrow wallet. So with the ability to broadcast your own transactions, then you have increased privacy is basically the crux of it. Replaced by fees. So if you send a transaction, you notice Mempool keeps on bumping you back because there's a lot more transactions going in that are paying a higher fee rate. You can right click on your transaction and then bump it up. So that's another benefit of using a wallet like Sparrow. And one of the biggest one, and probably the coolest one, is that you get a better understanding of how Bitcoin operates. You start to see the real nuts and bolts behind how transactions are processed, and also like how change works and how UTXOs work in general. So yeah, that's a great thing to dig into. Coin control risks. All right, so with the ability to manage UTXOs, you also introduce risks, which we've talked about a few times, but let's go over them. So you can accidentally spend ordinals as a part of the transaction, and as you saw in Sparrow in the last slide, there wasn't actually anything labeled. So let's imagine the scenario, party A. So Franken calls up someone and says, hey man, I really need 15,000 sats. That's all I need just to bump this transaction through. Can you send it to me? And the person says, hey, I'm out at the moment. I'm near a computer. I've got my seed phrase on me. I'm just going to plug it in, download Sparrow, and send you some money. So 15,000 sats is getting sent from party B. You create a transaction. You kind of just select the first two UTXOs in your Sparrow wallet because you're like, hey, let's send it through. Or you just go to send 15,000 sats, and it automatically selects those there. So you need to be careful when using a wallet that has coin control. So it selected the first two UTXOs. They've actually inscriptions as well. So you're about to send some ordinals to your friend when they just need it to send to an exchange or for the hot mint that's on at the moment. And so what you have is you've got two different inputs there, 10,000 sats, 10,000 sats. Your input equals 20,000 in total. You only need to send 15,000. So hopefully in your head you're hearing or saying to yourself, you receive 5,000 back in change. And just to give you an idea of what the inputs look like, you've got those two inputs, but really there's an inscription at the top here. There's an inscription at the top here. And so when you're sending with a wallet like Sparrow, it will stack them. And so you'll basically join them together, and the fees will be taken off the bottom down the bottom here. So you imagine, actually, that's a good point to point out, is that this is 10,000, this is 10,000 sats, your inscriptions here. But you imagine if your fee for some reason was like 12,000 sats, and what would happen is this part of the transaction would go to the miner, and the rest would then be sent out as needed. So, I mean, you wouldn't have enough funds in this example, but you get what I'm saying, is that if the fees were too much, and you've used two of these here, and you're like, hey, yeah, I'll be safe, but imagine if it does go too far and you actually get rid of this inscription here. Just reiterate, because I know I went over that quite quickly. You've got 10,000 sats, 10,000 sats. There's an inscription that's on the first sat like we talked about before in both of these. So this is what it looks like. And so you're going to send that there. And so your outputs, as we know already, 15,000 to party B, and then the change will go back to you. And what does it actually look like? So your inputs are spent. And so now these are spent. And this person has their 15,000 sats. You've got your 4,950 change. And this is the part that you actually sent your friend. So it's taken off there. And so now your friend actually has two of your OMB inscriptions, and you're a little bit upset about it, and you find out they've already sent their money to an exchange and you're never going to see it again. So that is a risk that we see from there. That's what we talk about when people are like, in the early days of ordinals and how everything was going, people are like, oh, you're gonna send your inscription to an exchange, and now with the ordinalware wallets, it has got a lot nicer. But what we're gonna do now is go through Sparrow really quickly and just kind of talk about a little bit more about what we've seen here, really. So the last part of our video is really quickly just running over what Sparrow looks like with UTXOs and a bit more about coin control. So in Sparrow, you can see we have transactions. So it runs through all the transactions that happen from this wallet. Send, so you can directly send to addresses. And this is what I was talking about before, we're being careful. And this is where people are like, you can spend your inscriptions or send your ordinals by accident. If you were to just go this here and then send 10,000, and we're just going to pick a receive address that's in my wallet, even though, just to show you. And so you can see that it's actually picked one of my inscriptions that's in my wallet to send that as a part of that when I didn't tell it to. So that's where people are like a bit cautious about, using Sparrow or something like that. Addresses, you can have a lot of different addresses there. And so I've had different addresses there. I've been playing around with things. So really good housekeeping. And so Sparrow is not dangerous if you understand it. That's the biggest thing. So the first thing I'll tell anyone when using Sparrow is actually freeze your UTXOs. So now if I was going to send something, it would actually come up with insufficient funds there. So freezing your UTXOs or freezing your inscriptions that are yours is the best way to do it. Let's have a look here so we can see that. I'm just going to unfreeze them because it's a bit easier to read for now. We have multiple different inscriptions, and can you tell me which UTXOs might be inscriptions? I hope you said all of them, because yes, they could all actually be inscriptions that have different sats in that range there. But the way to check is you would right click, copy transaction outputs, go to ordinals.com, and we can see there's an inscription inside that there. So as we were talking about before, it's an offset 0, so we're not to the very start of that UTXO. And it's only got one sat range, so it lives on the very first, it lives on this one here at 32. But yeah, that's the way that you checked that there. So you can actually select these, and I can go, I want to use these 3 as my inputs. So let's send those. So you can see it's already told me that I'm using 37,000 sats in this here. And just for the example, we're going to grab an address. And it's actually, this is the annoying part, it actually rearranges these input orders. So if you wanted to make sure, so I hover over and have a look, and you can see, this is the benefit of labeling them. So if you label them, you actually see the title of them there. But you imagine that this first one was your inscription, and it's first in, first out as well. So you would have it go out to this account here that we're sending to. You would want to make sure that your inscription is at the end at a risk of making it being spent as fees. So yes, you can select multiple different inputs, but as we were talking about before, that's going to take 3 UTXOs and actually just turn them into 1 if I was to send that full amount there. You can also, so say if you had a few mates that you needed to pay, you can add multiple different addresses in here. So we can go back to this one here and go 20,000. And so you can see now this one has 20,000. So that's what we're talking about, the orders changed around. This one has 10,000. That one has 20,000. And you can send that right there. And this is where and there's another video that I made about specifically sat hunting and isolating there, which goes it's a little bit more complicated, because let's say this UTXO of 17,000 here and number 5,025 actually had a sat on it that I wanted. So then you would have to select this one here, send 502024, because the next starts, it's index from, so it starts from 0. So 5025 would be the actual sat I want. And then we would go the rest there. So we would have the first transaction sending the stuff that we don't need back to ourselves. And then the second one, which would have the sat that we wanted at the very start, then we'll send that to a different address. So then we can make sure we have the sat we wanted at the very start of that next UTXO. The other thing that you want to be aware of is that, let's say we're sending these 3 here and we've got 2 different outputs. I will make it a little bit easier. Let's grab another receive address. So now you can see 13 and PE are the 2 different addresses there that we're sending to. So test B, and this is the other thing, is like labeling these actually 1 and 2 helps you kind of manage them a little bit better so you know where they should be going. So we want to make sure number 1 is at the top, number 2 is at the bottom, and then we want to make sure these are in the right order as well. So when you create the transaction, notice how this is actually flipped here as well. So when you create the transaction, sometimes you have to actually go back, create transaction, and then make sure they're in the right order. But this video here isn't to go into isolating sats or that sort of stuff. I'll make sure I have a link in the top right up here somewhere to talk more about sat hunting and isolating there. But this video is more just kind of showing you that you can select multiple different UTXOs. You can see what's inside your Sparrow wallet. You can right-click, use copy transaction output, and go to ordinals.com and see what you actually have inside that UTXO. It's the thing is, if you ought to be sending, as long as it isn't spent as fees during a transaction, then testing around with things and sending it to your own wallets is actually pretty safe. So we can see here there's 2,749 sats. So 17,000, 10,000. That go out, so 17,000, 10,000, that's in this group here, but it takes this off the bottom. So it'll be coming off the bottom of this 10,000 here. So that's one thing you want to do. You definitely need to be careful of is that when you're creating a transaction, just remember that the fees are taken off the bottom in this system here. Brilliant. I hope that's given you enough confidence to dig a little bit more and to understand more about coin control and also UTXOs. Thanks for watching. Let's do it.